Welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're definitely not just scratching the surface. We've got a whole stack of sources, insights, research, notes, and we're going to unpack the inner workings of, well, a true global tech giant, Facebook.
Yeah, and our mission really is to pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge from all this material.
Exactly. Giving you a shortcut to being genuinely well-informed about, that complex mix of internal politics, international relations, and corporate strategy. The really high-level stuff.
You should get ready for some surprising facts and maybe a few aha moments along the way.
Okay, so let's start with a pretty significant internal shift. Right after a key figure, Marn moves from the policy team to Instagram.
She became COO there, yeah.
Right. And the narrator mentions feeling this kind of unexpected sense of loss.
And Marn's replacement, that's Joel Kaplan. And what's really striking, according to the sources, is the internal dynamic he represented.
How so?
Well, Kaplan, he's a former Bush aide, and he's described as part of this web of people all entangled as bridesmaids, best friends, neighbors, and exes, right there in Facebook leadership.
Wow, so a real tight-knit group.
Very. And the source suggests their loyalty, their fealty, seems to be primarily to each other, to their tribe, maybe even ahead of any particular ideology.
So let's dig into Joel's background a bit more then. He was quite prominent in the George W. Bush administration.
Oh, yeah. Rose all the way up to Deputy Chief of Staff.
And he was apparently involved in that controversial Brooks Brothers riot back in 2000, the Florida recount thing.
That's right. An event he initially claimed he couldn't recall.
Oh, really?
But later, apparently, he was sharing stories over drinks after work about the craziness of participating in the riots.
Interesting. And wasn't there a story about him initially turning down Facebook?
Yes. He apparently thought the idea of leaving the White House for a, quote, college website was just preposterous at the time.
Hindsight, right?
Exactly. He later apparently regretted missing out on all that potential wealth, even expressing jealousy towards Ted Elliott, who did take an early job there.
So the core insight here seems to be that Facebook, this huge tech company, wasn't just built on code and market forces.
Not at all.
Joel's story really shows how personal histories, political ties, maybe even regrets about missed stock options can actually steer a company's global strategy.
Yeah, those personal connections and backgrounds can be incredibly impactful, maybe just as much as any formal business plan.
Okay, so Joel takes over policy. How did his approach compare to Marn's? The sources say it was pretty different.
Oh, a stark contrast. He's described as impetuous and dogmatic, and viewing Facebook very much through the lens of U.S. power.
Like the State Department was just an arm of Facebook.
Kind of, yeah. There's an example where Nauru, the island nation, blocked Facebook.
Right.
And Joel's reaction was to contact the U.S. State Department to get the U.S. government to publicly condemn the block. And this U.S.-centric view seems pretty strong. The source notes he was apparently surprised to learn Taiwan is an island.
Wait, seriously? Taiwan, an island?
That's what the source says. And that he frequently asked where countries in Latin America or Asia were.
Ah.
It led the narrator, the source author, to offer to buy him a world map.
Did she?
Apparently, one later showed up in his office.
That really drives home the point about the perspective, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So with that kind of worldview, he starts making a big change, hiring this political sales team.
Yeah, globally. The goal, quite explicitly, was to push politicians, both in the U.S. and here and abroad, into becoming advertisers.
Making them dependent on Facebook to win elections.
Exactly. So they'd be, less likely to do anything that'll harm Facebook. He wanted the policy team to actively generate revenue.
Not just be a cost center.
Precisely.
And the narrator, who's from New Zealand.
Where political spending is super limited, right?
Yeah.
Under 27,500 New Zealand dollars per candidate.
Yeah. She saw this whole approach as, repugnant is the word used.
You can see why. It highlights this really stark cultural and ethical clash.
And were there immediate consequences?
Oh, yeah. The source mentions Brazil was already facing fines of millions of dollars, and Mexico was being investigated for apparently defying rules around political ads.
So this really shows how Facebook, despite being global, maybe initially operated with a very American idea about money in politics.
Seems that way.
The key takeaway for you listening might be that even at these top levels, a lack of cultural or legal nuance can create real conflict and ethical problems worldwide.
And these disagreements, they sort of came to a head when Joel suggested setting up political action committees, PACEs, in other countries.
Yeah, Casey.
Exactly. The narrator immediately jumped in, explaining, that's illegal. Only U.S. citizens can contribute to elections here. That's true everywhere. Nobody wants foreigners bankrolling their elections.
That's a pretty fundamental misunderstanding of global election law, isn't it?
Absolutely. And when Joel tried to clarify, saying he meant contributions to politicians in other countries,
Oh, okay. How did that go down?
the narrator responded, carefully, that would be considered bribery and corruption in most of the countries I'm responsible for.
Oof.
Adding, except the dictatorships, they'll probably take your money.
And Joel's reaction.
The source says he looked crestfallen. It just perfectly highlights these huge differences in how money and politics mix or don't mix around the world.
That crestfallen image, it really paints a picture of maybe how insulated that perspective was sometimes.
Okay, so if that's the clash over political finance, how did this struggle play out with something even more sensitive, like content moderation? Free speech versus national rules.
Right, let's shift to that. It starts with a really key moment.
Yeah.
The Alexei Navalny rally page in Russia, January 2015.
Okay, but Navalny, what happened?
Over 60,000 people were invited to this event via Facebook, but then Facebook blocked the page after a complaint came in from Roskomnadzor, Russia's internet regulator.
Blocked the page. That must have caused waves.
Huge criticism, yeah. And it apparently annoyed Mark Zuckerberg quite a bit. He felt it should have been escalated right up to him. But Sheryl Sandberg defended the team.
She did. Said it was the right course of action to take to balance free expression with staying up in Russia. Kind of a pragmatic argument.
But what was Zuck's final word?
His stance was pretty clear. If we really came to believe not taking this down would cause the whole service to be blocked, then I would have supported taking the page down.
So keep the service available, essentially.
Yeah. His reasoning was, we aren't helping anyone if the whole service becomes unavailable.
Okay, but hang on. Here's where it gets really fascinating, right? The U.S. State Department weighed in.
Yes, they relayed their concern, but surprisingly, their position wasn't what Facebook expected.
What did they say?
They basically said the U.S. government position was that Facebook should actually be shut down in a country rather than comply with a legal request if it compromised its principles.
Wow. Shut down rather than comply. Joel Kaplan must have been.
Shocked and fumed, according to the source. Elliot Schrage's reaction was apparently, wow, these guys really don't understand how soft power works.
That is a huge disconnect between the government ideal and the business reality. So what does that tell us about Facebook's actual priority when governments push back?
It points to this tension, right, between the diplomatic ideal of free expression and the very practical business need to keep the lights on, keep the service running.
So the takeaway seems to be that when push comes to shove, Facebook, under pressure, will likely prioritize staying operational in a country.
Over sticking to abstract principles, yeah, if that's the choice they face. Growth and access often seem to win out.
Okay, so principle might take a backseat to growth. What's the internal fallout from that? If leadership is seen overriding their own public rules, how does that affect the teams?
That's a really important question, because Mark started to centralize content decisions more. He wanted to be the decider, especially for removals from sensitive countries.
A big shift from how things were done before.
Definitely. The source describes how they'd moved from really crude early rules and a sales team that apparently hated taking anything down, even, horrific stuff like beheading videos or really offensive pages, to developing their first proper community standards under Marn, which had more checks and balances.
But now Mark starts stepping in personally, overruling those standards.
Increasingly, yes. Examples mentioned include blocking a video of a school shooting in Mexico, political speech in Indonesia, threatening a coup against President Jokowi, who Mark apparently considered a buddy.
His buddy.
And also South Korean political speech. And the narrator notes that in nearly every case, his decision happens to coincide with his business interests.
So keeping governments happy to keep growth going.
That seems to be the pattern described. And internally, it created this sense of whiplash.
Whiplash. How did that play out?
At an annual off-site meeting, February 2015, Joel lays out Mark's new policy. Content only comes down if, 1, there is a credible threat to block Facebook, or 2, there is a risk to employees.
That's a very narrow set of criteria. What did the team think?
Especially people hired from countries where employees do get arrested.
They push back hard. Questions like, how can Mark understand the politics in my country? How can he just overrule local judgment? How can we say our rules are one thing publicly, but actually they're another?
Valid questions, Joel's response.
The source describes it as frustration. He apparently saw the questions as insolence and ignorance.
Ouch.
His line was essentially, management issues the orders.
So, looking at the bigger picture, what message does that send to governments around the world?
It's pretty stark, isn't it? If the only way to make Facebook act is to threaten to jail its employees or block the service, well, you're kind of inviting them to do just that.
Yeah.
The crucial takeaway seems to be that by centralizing power this way, Facebook effectively became an autocracy of one on these huge decisions, potentially trading principles for market access. Okay, so we see the internal dynamics, the content moderation struggles. Let's look at Mark Zuckerberg himself on the world stage. Direct engagements with leaders, starting with that Internet.org trip to Colombia, January 2015.
Right, a big push. The goal was to get President Santos on stage with Mark.
But there were issues.
Yeah, this is where personality meets high-stakes diplomacy. Mark apparently had a strict policy. No appointments before noon.
Why?
A lifetime staying up late into the night coding, apparently.
Okay, but President Santos
Was right in the middle of these incredibly tense peace negotiations with the FARC rebels. His schedule wasn't exactly flexible.
Not ideal timing. And wasn't there something about a hotel mix-up?
Oh, yeah. 2 Marriotts. It led to the narrator apparently running barefoot through Bogota to the presidential palace to sort it out.
Barefoot through Bogota. That's quite a visual. It really captures the potential chaos behind these events.
Definitely. And it didn't get much smoother. Mark arrived late. His assistant apparently lied about a late flight.
Leaving the president waiting.
Yeah. And during the meeting itself, Mark seemed flustered, wasn't ready to discuss the FARC peace process, and just focused on pitching Internet.org.
How long did the meeting last?
Less than 10 minutes, according to the source. And then Santos apparently left Mark standing on stage alone after just a very brief interview.
Ouch. What was the actual consequence of all that?
Pretty significant. Colombia had been pegged as a potential global leader for Internet.org after this. They did nothing.
So the takeaway is stark. Individual quirks, like not taking morning meetings, can actually derail major international initiatives.
It seems so. Little things can have big impacts.
Okay, fast forward a few months. Summit of the Americas, Panama, April 2015. Another Internet.org push.
Yep. And the narrator actually managed to negotiate a spot for Mark on a panel with President Obama and other presidents.
That sounds like a coup.
It was, but then the White House apparently got furious. The source isn't clear why. And Mark got kicked off the panel, relegated to the front row.
From panelist to audience. Tough break.
Still, he got a moment when Obama pointed him out from the stage. But the real memorable bit, apparently, was the exit.
What happened?
Chaos. Mark's bodyguard was forcefully pushing people aside to clear a path.
Right.
And then this plaintive voice cuts through the crowd saying, but, I'm the president of Guatemala.
No, the president of Guatemala got shoved.
Seems so. And Mark's reaction? A subtle smile at the gaffe, which apparently became an internal running joke for years.
Wow. A president gets manhandled, and it's an inside joke. That says something.
It's quite a scene to imagine. But despite the social awkwardness, Panama was actually a win for Internet.org.
Really? Wow.
Generated about 30 new partnerships. Mark and his colleague Javi apparently called the narrator a policy badass for her work there.
So, success despite the blunders.
And there's another humanizing touch. Mark sent a thank you message with an uncharacteristic smiley emoji, thanking the narrator for making the trip productive and also fun.
A smiley emoji from Mark.
Yeah, the narrator even observes, when does Mark ever get to have much fun? It shows that mix of high-stakes work and just, human moments.
Right. But the most critical meeting in Panama, the source says, was with Brazil's president, Dilma Rousseff.
Absolutely key. Brazil was Facebook's biggest target in Latin America, half the population still offline. Plus, Brazil was seen as a global leader in internet regulation.
With comprehensive laws and a history of being willing to block our service.
Exactly. High stakes.
And this meeting almost didn't happen.
Almost derailed. Mark had an impromptu meeting with President Obama that ran long, leaving Rousseff waiting.
Again with the waiting presidents.
Yeah. The narrator actually had to push Mark's comms and security teams to physically interrupt the meeting with Obama.
Interrupting the U.S. president.
Yeah.
Gutsy.
Mark's departure from Obama was apparently slow and agonizing to watch.
So he finally gets to Rousseff. How did that go?
She was gracious, but the source describes her as having a steely grasp of the technical aspects of internet regulation. She wasn't easily impressed.
She pushed back.
Oh, yeah. questioned Zero Rating, the model behind Internet.org, where telecoms subsidized the data. She demanded real infrastructure investment, even suggesting drones to deliver internet to remote parts of the Amazon.
Things Facebook could maybe do, but wasn't planning for Brazil just then.
Right. Stuff they had no immediate plans for there.
So Mark's pitch wasn't landing.
He got desperate, apparently, even offered to fly down to Brazil personally to launch Internet.org. But Rousseff remained inscrutable.
And afterwards?
Days later, she told the press she'd only discussed infrastructure with Mark. No mention of Internet.org or Zero Rating.
Sending a clear signal.
A very clear signal.
Yeah.
Joel Kaplan's reaction sums it up. Oh, man, cold feet already, the battle is joined, and we need to start fighting back.
So the takeaway there is pretty clear. Savvy governments with their own national interests aren't just going to roll over for Silicon Valley's agenda.
Especially not if they understand the tech and policy landscape themselves. It shows a real clash of interests.
Okay, our final stop. The World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, January 2015. That gathering of the high-flying people who think they run the planet.
That's the one. And the narrator gives a glimpse into the logistical nightmare, especially trying to balance work and being a new mother.
What happened?
She essentially smuggles her 11-month-old daughter, Sasha, into Davos, terrified of Sheryl Sandberg's reaction if she found out.
Smuggled her baby. Wow.
And she actually gets praised, receives a good job for successfully hiding the fact she was a mother juggling childcare.
That's a revealing detail about the culture, maybe.
Then the baby gets sick in this stiflingly hot room, leading her husband to declare, "This is, beyond doubt, the worst idea we have ever had."
You can almost feel the stress. What about Davos itself? What's the vibe?
It's described as having this Byzantine social structure, status is weaponized, a real Hunger Games for the 0.0001%.
Hunger Games for the elite. Nice.
And Sheryl Sandberg is depicted as being totally in her element, every cell in her body, tingling, primed, and hard at work, weighing, assessing, and measuring whom we should stop to speak to. Just constant calculation.
So amidst all this networking, did the Facebook leadership get any warnings? Any storm clouds gathering?
Oh, yes. Stark warnings. A Wall Street Journal editor apparently told Joel Kaplan flat out, "Everyone's currently going after Google, but you're next."
Ominous.
And one of Sheryl's former Treasury colleagues warned her, "You all are 2 years away from being as hated as the investment banks."
Wow. And European leaders were critical, too.
Yeah.
About taxes.
Yeah. People like the Italian Prime Minister, UK Chancellor George Osborne, criticizing tech companies as leeches for not paying its fair share.
Which brings us to the whole double Irish tax scheme, right?
Exactly. That infamous setup used by Facebook, Google, Apple, and others to shift profits through Ireland to tax havens like Bermuda, paying basically no taxes at all on huge foreign earnings.
And the EU was cracking down on that.
They'd forced Ireland to close the loophole. But then comes this critical meeting with the Irish Prime Minister, Enda Kenny.
What happened there?
Kenny, described as quite charming, reveals he's managed to secure Facebook an extra 5 years of the double Irish loophole.
5 more years. Wow.
Until 2020. And then he proposes a new scheme, the Knowledge Development Box.
What's that?
Basically, a way to tax income from intellectual property at half of Ireland's already very low 12.5% corporate rate. So like 6.25%.
Another tax break, essentially. And this is where things get really interesting with the notes.
Right. Sheryl immediately tells the narrator, "Stop taking notes."
Why?
Because, quote, "my notes can be subpoenaed," signaling this part of meeting was strictly off the book.
Off-the-record deal-making on tax loopholes?
And Sheryl insists we'll have our team help shape them, meaning help shape the rules of this new tax scheme.
So Facebook is helping write its own tax breaks. And wasn't there something else Kenny asked for? About Ireland's Data Protection Commission.
Yes. Before the meeting ends, he asks Facebook to help assist in building up the credibility of Ireland's DPC. This is the regulator that would be responsible for enforcing the massive new GDPR privacy law across Europe for Facebook.
The GDPR enforcer for Facebook and Sheryl.
Agrees. Essentially promising to help make Ireland's regulator, which some saw as a lapdog, appear more like a pit bull to satisfy the rest of Europe, while perhaps remaining favorable to Facebook.
Okay, that's quite a deal, helping the regulator look tough while maybe ensuring they stay friendly. So after this meeting,
The narrator actually suggests to Cheryl maybe Facebook should just pay more tax. As a smart strategy to head off worse regulations later, cites Starbucks doing something similar in the UK.
And Cheryl's response?
She just ignores the suggestion. Her big conclusion, delivered later to Mark and other execs, is revealing.
What was it?
The best thing we can do is invest in getting policymakers to use Facebook to communicate and politicians to win elections.
Back to Joel Kaplan's playbook.
Exactly. The key takeaway here is seeing how these huge tech companies actively work with governments, sometimes behind closed doors, not just to comply, but to actively shape regulations, secure tax advantages, and leverage political influence for business gain.
And this Davos meeting gives Joel the green light.
He gets to supercharge his efforts, hiring more teams globally to coach politicians, sell them ads.
Make them reliant on Facebook for their power.
That's the strategy. The narrator strongly disagrees, believing it will only end badly.
Leading to complicity with bad actors, alienating losers.
Yeah, getting tangled up with objectionable people who do vile things. But her feeling is, nobody's listening to me. It really shows that tension between raw business goals and the potential societal consequences.
A real clash of visions for the company's role.
And just to end Davos on a slightly more absurd note, Joel Kaplan, despite apparently disdaining these globalist gatherings at first,
He comes around.
he grows to love Davos. He's spotted at one point scooping up tiramisu out of a large catering-sized glass dish, all by himself.
Just helping himself to the tiramisu.
Okay. And he's incredibly proud of his sweet boots, these sort of cowboy-style snow boots.
The wee boots.
Yeah. He even blames the narrator when he loses them, making her crawl around on her hands and knees through the various coat tracks at the Congress Center near 1 a.m. trying to find these boots.
Crawling around looking for Joel's lost cowboy boots at 1 a.m. in Davos while world leaders mingle? That perfectly captures the bizarre mix of high power and utter absurdity, doesn't it?
It really does. A strange blend of global strategy and, well, lost footwear.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, what does it all mean? We've taken this deep dive into Facebook's inner world. We've seen the personal ambitions, the power struggles, the high-stakes diplomacy, the controversial strategies.
And if you connect it to the bigger picture, what emerges is how decisions made by just a few people at the very top of a platform like this can really profoundly shape politics, economies, access to information for literally billions of people.
And often, it seems, in ways that prioritize the business interests, maybe over the company's own stated principles.
That's often the tension described in these sources, yes.
So it leaves us with a pretty important question for you to think about. When these platforms become so essential for elections, for governments, and their leaders sometimes act like these autocrats of one, what does real accountability even look like?
And maybe more importantly, what are the long-term implications for things like global democracy and open communication?